One morning, you forget a name you've known forever. Then it's where you left your phone, or what day it is. You brush it off, but deep down you know something feels different. The same breakfast, the same routine, but your brain feels foggy, slow, like it's not quite yours. This is how memory loss quietly begins for millions of seniors after 60. But listening to this episode gives hope, since you'll uncover 5 common foods that are silently damaging your brain and what alternatives you can eat instead. Welcome back, everyone, to the Senior Health Podcast, where East meets West to help you stay strong, sharp, and independent through every season of life. Now, hear me out. A major study in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience found that everyday foods with nitrates, trans fats, and preservatives can speed up memory loss, not because they're junk, but because the aging brain processes them differently. What felt fine at 40 can quietly cause harm at 70. And here's the real shock. Nearly 80% of seniors eat these foods daily without ever realizing the risk. So to help us understand what we should not eat and what we can eat instead, sitting across from me is Japan's oldest practicing physician, over 100 and still treating patients. Welcome back to the show, Doctor. This episode is so important, right?
Thank you, John. Yes, because most people still believe memory loss is inevitable, but it's not. In many cases, it's preventable. What we eat each day speaks to the brain, and after 60, the wrong foods can slowly confuse that message. The right ones can help protect it.
That's such an important shift, because for so many seniors listening, the confusion is real. You're eating healthy, you're following the same habits, but your mind feels different, your clarity fades, and you quietly wonder, is this just what getting older feels like?
It's not just aging, it's miscommunication. I've seen this in thousands of patients, people who think they're declining, when really their brains are underfueled in ways they've never been taught to recognize. So today I will reveal 5 foods that quietly weaken the brain, and what to eat instead. These aren't rare ingredients, they're everyday staples, and I hope every listener stays with us till the end, since I will also share the 2 brain-boosting foods Japanese elders eat every day.
I'm so glad you said that, because one of my patients, a woman named Clara, came to me in tears. Not from pain, but from fear. She said, "I'm doing everything right. I eat healthy, I stay active, but my mind feels like it's slipping." And when we looked deeper, it wasn't her habits that were wrong. It was the foods she trusted that were quietly working against her.
I've heard that story more times than I can count. I feel like I'm losing myself. But most of the time the brain isn't failing. It's just not getting what it needs.
So let's change that today. But before we begin, this episode was made because of your questions, your comments, your stories. Please let us know in the comments what you want us to cover next, together with where you are watching from.
Yes, and we'll do our best to bring it to life.
Now let's start with the one area memory loss often begins: food. What should we be avoiding, and what should we eat instead to protect clarity, confidence, and independence?
It begins in the smallest places, the capillaries that carry oxygen and nutrients to the brain. As we age, those pathways become more fragile, more easily inflamed, more vulnerable to damage from what we eat. One wrong food doesn't cause dementia, but repeated friction, day after day, begins to wear down the brain's resilience.
That's the part most people never hear. They think it happens suddenly, but it's erosion, not explosion.
Exactly. Inflammation is the silent thief. It makes the brain less efficient, less flexible, and more prone to storing the wrong kinds of proteins, ones linked to memory loss and cognitive fog.
So food is acting almost like a switch, signaling the brain to either protect or degrade itself?
Yes, and after 60, that switch becomes more sensitive. What the brain once tolerated, it now reacts to more intensely, more rapidly, and often more destructively.
That makes perfect sense. The body may stay the same on the outside, but the way it processes food on the inside changes dramatically. It's like sending the same message to a different system and expecting the same result.
That's a powerful way to put it. The same slice of toast, the same processed snack, the same sweet drink, all land differently once the brain's filtration system begins to slow. And this isn't just theory. Studies show clear changes in the hippocampus, the region tied to memory, when these foods are consumed regularly.
So it's not about one bad meal. It's about daily exposure to foods the brain no longer knows how to handle. And that creates an internal storm of inflammation, plaque, and misfiring that many people assume is just normal aging.
Which is why catching this early and understanding the science is so critical. Because if we know what to avoid and what to replace it with, the brain can actually repair some of the damage. That's the gift of neuroplasticity. It's never too late to send the brain a different message.
That's deeply encouraging. We're not powerless in this. We just need to know where to look and what to listen for. And I know you've identified 5 foods that are especially risky for memory after 60. I'd like to go through them one by one, starting with the first food most people never suspect.
Let's begin with what I consider the most misleading food: processed meats, sausages, hot dogs, deli slices, even low-fat turkey breast. These are often labeled as lean, high in protein, or convenient, but they contain nitrates and nitrites, preservatives that may inflame the brain and harm the gut-brain axis. In seniors, they've been linked to greater amyloid plaque buildup, a key marker of dementia. And worse, these compounds may reduce blood flow to the brain, making it harder for neurons to repair themselves.
That's shocking. Most people think of those foods as quick, even healthy, especially when they're advertised as low-calorie or light.
That's the trap. These foods aren't poisonous, but they are persistent. When eaten regularly, they change the chemistry of the brain's internal environment. I've had patients who ate cold cuts daily, believing they were making a smart choice, and couldn't understand why their memory was becoming unreliable.
You're describing something that builds up silently, not an immediate cause and effect.
Exactly. And because it's so gradual, people rarely trace it back to the food. They blame stress, aging, even genetics. But often, it's accumulation.
So if that's the first food to watch, where do we go from here?
The second one is even more subtle: refined carbohydrates. I'm talking about white bread, crackers, sugary breakfast cereals. These create sudden spikes in blood sugar, followed by deep crashes. And those crashes starve the brain of the steady glucose it needs to function well.
It's amazing how often those foods are part of the healthy image, whole grain-looking cereals or breads that aren't really whole at all.
That's the irony. The packaging speaks wellness, but the ingredients speak confusion. And when insulin resistance begins to affect the brain, which we now call type 3 diabetes, memory begins to falter, attention drops, and mood swings become more common.
It's eerie how many people describe exactly that, without ever connecting it to food.
Yes, and that brings me to the third: sweetened dairy. Yogurts with fruit, low-fat puddings, digestive shakes. Many of these are loaded with sugar and artificial stabilizers. The gut and brain are directly linked through the vagus nerve, and when the gut is inflamed, the brain feels it, with fatigue, fog, and even depression.
That connection still surprises me, that what lives in the gut can speak so loudly to the mind.
It surprises patients too. But when we change just one or two of those foods, clarity often returns within weeks. They start remembering names, sleeping better, feeling like themselves again. And it didn't come from a pill. It came from giving their brain the right environment to thrive.
So much of this is hidden in plain sight.
Because these foods don't scream danger, they're normal, familiar, which is why they're so hard to question. But memory is fragile, and what we eat is either building its resilience or breaking it down. These first three foods aren't the only ones, but they are among the most common culprits I've seen in practice.
It's incredible how much trust we place in routines, and how hard it is to realize that the routine itself might be the problem.
Exactly, Tete, and yet the brain has a remarkable capacity to respond once we remove the friction. That's why awareness is everything, and we're just getting started.
You've shared 3 foods that are deeply embedded in everyday life, but I know you've said there are 2 more, and that the last ones are especially dangerous because they're often considered harmless or even helpful. What are those next 2, and what do we need to understand before they do more damage?
The fourth food is one many people think of as healthy: fruit juice, orange juice, apple juice, even no sugar added varieties. These drinks flood the brain with fructose, far more than the body was ever meant to handle in liquid form. This can overwhelm the liver, promote insulin resistance, and, crucially, reduce the brain's ability to clear waste proteins. That's how memory loss begins for some, not with forgetting a name, but with the brain's cleanup system slowing down.
That's surprising. A glass of juice feels so innocent, especially for breakfast.
It does, but it's misleading. Eating the whole fruit is completely different. It comes with fiber, which slows down the sugar spike and nourishes the gut. But juice removes that buffer. And in older adults, the spike crash pattern from daily juice can wear on the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, like waves eroding a rock.
You're describing something that looks harmless but behaves like a stressor inside the body.
Exactly. And that brings us to the last food: fried snacks and processed oils. Potato chips, crackers, even vegetable-based health snacks often contain omega-6 fats that are highly unstable. These promote inflammation in the brain, make neurons more rigid, and reduce the brain's ability to transmit signals cleanly.
And the worst part is, these are the snacks people reach for when they're tired or foggy, right?
Yes, and it creates a feedback loop. The more foggy they feel, the more they snack, and the worse the brain gets at restoring clarity. These oils don't just sit in the gut, they embed in the brain's very structure. The membranes around neurons, the tiny communication hubs of the brain, become less flexible. That stiffness disrupts how signals move, which means slower processing, weaker memory, and even emotional volatility.
So you're saying the food actually changes the brain's wiring, not just its energy levels.
Correct. Most people imagine the brain as static, but it's made of living tissue. And that tissue is built directly from what we eat. If we feed it unstable oils and fried additives, we're building it out of weak, inflamed materials. Over time, that structure can't hold up under stress. And when people experience those bad days, where everything feels off, it's often the brain reacting to years of that erosion.
That's a deeply unsettling thought, because we're talking about foods that feel comforting, that feel like home for many people.
Yes, and I say this gently because I know those habits are emotional. A bowl of chips at night, a handful of crackers between meals. These are rituals. But the brain doesn't respond to comfort. It responds to content. And those oils, especially when reused or heated repeatedly during processing, trigger oxidative stress, which damages brain cells in the same way rust eats through metal.
It's ironic. The snacks people reach for to feel better are often what keep them stuck in that fog.
That's the tragedy of it, because they don't feel the damage right away. It shows up as forgetfulness, as irritability, as confusion about why they can't think clearly anymore. And it often gets blamed on age, when food has quietly been a major player.
And for people who've eaten like this for years, is there still a way back?
Absolutely. Just as the brain incorporates harmful fats into its structure, it can begin to rebuild with better ones, replacing those fried snacks with foods rich in omega-3s, like sardines, mackerel, or even walnuts. It gives the brain material it can actually heal with. The inflammation calms, signal speed returns, and often within weeks, people feel more focused and emotionally stable. It's one of the most hopeful things I've seen in older patients.
That gives people a roadmap, something they can start doing tonight. We're not talking about expensive treatments or perfect diets. We're talking about shifting what's on the plate. So, doctor, what about the 2 brain-boosting foods you promised to share with us?
Let's talk about those, John. I promised to give you some. So one of the most powerful changes I recommend is incorporating traditional fermented foods. In Japan, we've used miso, natto, and pickled vegetables for centuries. They feed the gut and reduce neuroinflammation. For protein, we focus on small, oily fish, rich in omega-3s that protect brain volume, and we eat slowly at consistent times, giving the brain predictable fuel.
That rhythm of eating, that feels like medicine in its own way.
It is. The body loves rhythm, and the brain, especially as it ages, responds best to consistency and gentle nourishment. When we stop shocking it with sugar spikes, artificial fats, and processed salt, it begins to restore itself.
That's so different from how most people think. It's not just about adding a supplement or avoiding one snack. It's about rethinking the whole relationship with food. And it's not about restriction. It's about protection, giving the brain the tools it needs to stay sharp, curious, and connected, even decades after 60.
Exactly. And that's why we don't start with fear. We start with clarity. Food is a daily message we send to the brain, and it's never too late to send a better one.
It's powerful to think that the brain is still listening, even now.
Yes, that's what I want every listener to understand. The brain doesn't close itself off with age. It adapts. It reflects what we give it. And food is one of the clearest signals we send every single day. That means change is always possible.
That alone gives people hope, because so many feel like the damage is done.
But in most cases, it's not final. Fog is not failure. Memory loss is not destiny.
That's the most powerful shift of all.
It means that by removing just a few harmful foods and replacing them with nourishment, clarity can begin to return. People don't just feel sharper, they feel more like themselves again.
And that's something no prescription can give.
Exactly. And for anyone listening, I'll say this: don't aim for perfect, aim for progress. One change is enough to begin.
That reshapes how we think about memory, not as something we lose, but something we still have the power to protect. After everything we've explored today, what's the one truth you want every listener to carry forward?
That it's not too late to choose better, feel better, and remember more clearly. The brain may age, but it never stops responding to care. And if you like this episode, give it a thumbs up, comment as always, and I recommend you watching this video next.